In his clarification video on tolerance and the Ground Zero Mosque, Thunderf00t ends by saying, "But please, be sporting about it and limit your criticisms to things that I actually said." In this video, I will begin by briefly recapping some of the arguments Thunderf00t made in his original video, together with the specific rebuttals I made to what Thunderf00t actually said in that video. I will then move to address the principal argument made in the second video, and then make some general comments about the issue, focusing on whether its being a mosque or not matters. At the beginning of his video, Thunderf00t did clearly and unequivocally say that it is the right of the promoters of Park 51 to build Park 51, but that people will judge them on their actions, in the same way that people judge the Westboro Baptist Church on their actions, even though they have the constitutional right to do it. I said that the comparison with Westboro Baptist Church does not hold up, and I justified that position by looking at Rauf, the main promoter of Park 51, and the WBC and their objectives. Thunderf00t can say that he didn't actually say that Park 51 was akin to the Westboro Baptist Church, but simply that the methodology there was similar in people's actions and reactions. But there was clearly an implication there, of which more later. Thunderf00t then said that people are judged on their actions. I countered by saying that people are not judged on their actions, but on what others think their actions are. Perhaps Thunderf00t has a better idea of this now. He then moved on to the issue of reciprocation, and he made an analogy with a supposed Crusader house as an example, as a hypothetical. What would happen if some Christian extremists flew planes into the Kaaba, destroyed it, and then a few years later a Christian organisation wanted to set up a church near that site? I contended that this was a straw man. Unlike in the analogy Thunderf00t made, the building being called Crusader House, Park 51 is no longer called Cordoba House, it's called Park 51, and I said that I hoped we could restrain our base emotions more than seems to be the tendency in Saudi Arabia. I then asked Thunderf00t to put himself in the position of the promoters of Park 51 and then consider reciprocation, in this manner. A respected American, sent by 2 presidents on 4 occasions to argue for the United States in the Middle East, who has repeatedly and publicly criticized terrorism, and who has a track record of trying to improve relations between the West and Islam, decides to buy a building near, but out of sight of, Ground Zero. There he plans to set up a community centre to make it clear that the actions of the 9/11 terrorists do not represent the views of the great majority of Muslims, and particularly American Muslims, by allowing for greater intercultural and interfaith dialogue. He hopes that this can help prevent a repetition of 9/11. He names the centre after Cordoba, because Cordoba is to him a symbol of the 3 Abrahamic faiths peacefully living side by side in a centre of learning. There is a backlash, with accusation of triumphalism, imperialism and disrespect. For merely saying that the organisation has the right to dispose of private land as it wishes within local ordinances, the president receives criticism. Islam is portrayed as a monolith of intolerance, incompatible with even the merest hint of civilization. Well-known science vloggers describe you as jerks. How would you feel in that instance of reciprocation? Thunderf00t went on to say, quote, "Saudi Arabia is maybe an archetypal example of what Islam has to offer. It's a mainstream Islamic country governed by Muslims who believe in the application of Sharia," end quote. I said that this was wrong on 4 points. Firstly, that Saudi Arabia is different because of the presence of Mecca and Medina and the actions of the House of Saud to benefit from that for its own ends. Secondly, I said it was a rentier state, with the implications that has for authoritarianism and civil society. Thirdly, I said the Wahhabism popular in Saudi Arabia is not accepted by most Muslims. Fourthly, and with reference to the Freedom in the World report published by Freedom House, I showed that Saudi Arabia is not typical of Islamic countries. Indeed, it's pretty close to the bottom of the list. Moving on to Thunderfoot's principal point in this video. He says he made an argument that goes something like this. Observation 1. Mecca is, for want of a better word, an icon of discrimination. The religious discrimination is based on the Islamic holy book and is practiced in the centre, the very heart of the Islamic world. Observation 2. Many Muslims get on their knees and pray to this theocratically institutionalised icon of discrimination some 5 times a day. Conclusion. It is not sensible to allow the specified group to use in the name of tolerance as an argument, all based on some elementary game theory which I admit I really did kind of gloss over in this video. Let me reply in order. Firstly, about the nature of Mecca. That is your interpretation. Others see it differently. Perhaps in some abstract way you are actually right, that you are theologically or philosophically correct. Others disagree with you, and when they are praying towards the Kaaba, it is not because it's an icon of discrimination, but because for them it's an icon of unity or whatever it happens to be. I would suggest that you consider raising people's consciousness about the issue rather than saying you don't want to hear them. On the second observation, it's towards the Kaaba, not to the Kaaba. The difference does actually matter. Muslims used to pray to Jerusalem. The point is to have unity. So they're not praying to what you call, quote, a theocratically institutionalized icon of discrimination some 5 times a day, end quote. It happens that their Sanctus Sanctorum is in a state governed by a particularly unpleasant regime. Even if we accept, however, premises 1 and 2, conclusion 3 does not follow. I agree that we have not seen your game theory. I would very much like to see it, by the way, but given the fundamental problems with your 2 observations, your conclusions are going to be dodgy. In any case, and accepting premises 1 and 2, there is the Popperian objection. We can be justified in not tolerating, in the name of tolerance, the intolerant when their intolerance could actually threaten the tolerant nature of our society. I apologise for the clumsiness of that sentence. It's the best I could do. That does mean, of course, that in other circumstances we should tolerate the intolerant. I do not think that that section of the American Muslim community that is intolerant is anywhere near posing a threat to the presumed tolerance of the USA or the West in general, and so I reject the idea that we should not allow Park 51 on those grounds. I would add that we need to remember, as I think Karl Popper mentions, that an act of intolerance, even of intolerance in the name of tolerance, can provoke further intolerance, both in terms of magnitude of intolerance by the already intolerant, and making more people move towards intolerance. I would be interested to know if Thunderfoot factored this into his game theory. It is worth considering what Thunderfoot is saying here. I hope I am summarising his position correctly when he says that he will not pay attention to calls for toleration from Muslims who pray 5 times a day towards the Kaaba. Let me make 2 responses. I do not pray at all, let alone towards the Kaaba. I am asking Thunderfoot to be tolerant. Secondly, you are making an argument to remove a great many people from a great portion of political debate. Surely, Thunderfoot, you can see how problematic that will be. Finally, Thunderfoot says that the difference between it being a mosque and a community centre doesn't matter. I would probably agree, but from the other side. What Thunderfoot says is that to increase the number of people who pray toward Mecca is a bad thing, and that he's not convinced that that's going to make the world a better place. And he goes on to say that the growth of some religions is more egregious than others. Here is the fundamental problem. with all of Thunderfoot's arguments. Religions are not monoliths. Every member of a religion does not agree to a single point of view, let alone one which Thunderfoot has decreed they must agree to. The reality is that religion is not going away, and so we have a choice. We can try to make it as inoffensive as possible by promoting and supporting those parts of religions that are amenable to what we can broadly call Enlightenment values, or we can turn a cold shoulder towards all members of a religion, with all the implication that has for driving people towards more extreme positions. To recap, I made specific rebuttals to specific points that Thunderfoot raised in his original video. I then addressed the argument made in his recent video that it is not sensible to allow the specified group to use in the name of tolerance as an argument, before considering whether the nature of the building is important. I would make a final point. As you have perhaps recently discovered, Thunderfoot, words and actions can be misinterpreted. You have a bully pulpit, Thunderfoot. I would choose your words more carefully. I'm Landon Cole. I'll see you next time.